to hit record. There we go. And Jenny is from Arizona. Oh, Jenny, I hope your weather is nice and warm and lovely there. So good to have you with us. We've got people from the deep south in Texas. We've got Arizona. We've got Ontario, San Francisco. Hi, Lakita. Good to see you with us on the Facebook group. Hello, hello, hello. All righty. We are just about ready to rock and roll here. And again, if you've just joined us, I'd love to know who you are, where you're from. It's just kind of fun. You know, sometimes we've got people from Ireland and Australia and Italy. We've had Slovenia. We've had all across Canada, all across the US. And it's just fun with this tech that we can actually meet like this all across the world and share ideas. So love to get to know you a little bit. Are you ready to rock and roll? If you are ready, give me a thumbs up. All right, because I am so ready. We've got Faith joining us. Hello, welcome. I'm glad to see you in the Facebook group. And we are, Melody, yeah, we don't have a thumbs up sign in the webinar, do we? So she's typed in thumbs up. Way to go, Melody. Thank you so much. So today, if you've been hanging out with me for any length of time, and some of you have, you know that I've actually got two missions in my business, in my holistic health business. The first one is to mentor practitioners who are struggling in their businesses because they're spending their own time unpaid and after hours creating client programs. And the second one is to teach the truth about iridology and its proper application in a wellness practice. Because, you know, there is so much old stuff out there that is not true anymore. It may have been true 50 years ago, but science marches on. And so we want to make sure that we are doing the right stuff when it comes to iridology. Does that sound good? Does that sound like a smart thing to do to make sure you're up to date, that you know what the current research is on iridology so you can move forward? So as we look at this topic today, we're going to ask the question, what can we diagnose with iridology? What is our scope of practice? Now, we need to remember here that a diagnosis means naming a disease. And in order to accurately name a disease, we need to have scientific proof. Legally, we need to have scientific proof. So when you go to a doctor or a naturopath who can requisition tests and analyze the results, they take those results, they run them through whatever filters they've got, whatever training they've got, and they come up with names of a disease, and then they create the treatment protocol based on the disease name. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing to do, right? It gives you a starting point, but as long as they got it right. There are statistics that suggest that and this is based on autopsies, that at least 20% of the time and up to 50% of the time, the diagnosis is incorrect, which means the treatment was incorrect. Is that a little bit scary? Just a little bit. Jenny says we have to be an MD, nutritionist, RN. Okay, you have to be an MD to requisition tests, right? And so, these results of 20% inaccuracy based on autopsy came out of the British Medical Journal, Volume 22, issue Supplement 2. So I'm not making these numbers up. These are coming out of medical journals where they're saying they messed up at least 20% of the time. So maybe, just maybe, as iridologists, we don't actually want to diagnose. Maybe we don't want to name disease. If we are not if we are not properly licensed in such a way to allow us the privilege of naming disease, that's okay. And, you know, we've all heard of cases where the medical world or somebody has labeled a disease incorrectly. They've made an incorrect diagnosis. And we've seen that once that diagnosis is made, nobody else wants to change it. Once that diagnosis is in a medical file, no one wants to say my colleague was wrong. And because of that, it's really hard to move forward and get proper treatment. So in addition to the question of, an additional question we need to answer is, what value does it have in assessing what value does iridology rather have in assessing client needs and creating wellness programs? That sounds like a good question to ask. We're going to look at a few cases today. We're going to look at eyeballs because that's always fun, right? We love looking at eyeballs. And what we are going to look at today is several cases. We're going to look at one of a medically diagnosed case of ADHD. Because I do a lot of work with high-risk pregnancy and infertility, we're going to look at 4 different cases of polycystic ovarian syndrome. And we're going to look at one case of the Sphincter of Audi dysfunction. Okay, so these are going to be, I think they're interesting. Hopefully you will find them interesting as well. Just before we do that, I want to introduce myself, if I may, please. I got into holistic healing just over 4 decades ago. I was very interested in things natural when I was in high school. I was raised in a very medically oriented family. If something was wrong, you went to the doctor, whatever he said, you did. And even in high school, I started to feel uneasy with that. I was getting really interested in nutrition. Back then, whole grains were recognized as being better than white flour, which whole grains still are. So my parents had a wheat grinder and they had wheat. And so I would literally grind the wheat, make the bread by hand, hoping that this was a positive step forward for my family. And I did that all through high school, right? And so that was my start. Again, I've been now a holistic practitioner, iridologist, nutritional consultant, and master herbalist for 4 decades. I've written books that I've published privately: Pregnancy Naturally, Healthy Kids Naturally. I can't even remember all the titles now. Oh, hey, I've got them written down. That's a change. I added that to my script. Pregnancy Naturally, the Herbal Birth Kit Handbook, Healthy Kids Naturally, The Essential Guide to Nature Sunshine Products, Biokinesiology and Color Therapies Level 1 and 2, and I've written the textbook for Confident Nutritionist Dynamic Iridology as well. I've created and taught a lot of courses. I've created many years ago Herbology Level 1, which was a 20-hour course to teach people the practical application of herbs in the home. Herbology Level 2, which was a 16-hour program for advanced herbal training for home use. Designed and taught Biokinesiology and Color Therapy Level 1 and Level 2. I've been a certified prenatal educator, and I taught prenatal classes for a few years. And my current love is teaching iridology. And so the course I've designed, which is sanctioned and approved by the International Iridology Practitioners Association. The course is called Dynamic Iridology Assessment System for Holistic Health Practitioners. So if you'll stay with me to the very end today, I'm going to spend like about 45 seconds. It will be the shortest commercial you've ever heard to give you a little bit of information about the Dynamic Iridology Assessment System course that is starting in April. Alrighty, and you can see here that I am a certified iridologist. This is my latest iridology certification from IPA and my latest certification as an instructor with IPA. Alrighty, you ready to look at some eyes? Yes, yes, yes. If you are, give me a big fat yes in the comments. You ready to look at some eyeballs as we look at what we see and what information it gives us? Yeah, yeah. Okay. Let's rock and roll. So again, what is the value of constitutional iridology as an assessment tool if we cannot actually name diseases? These are the eyes of he was 10 years old when he first came in to see me. Lakita, thank you. And Amy, thank you for that enthusiasm. Love it, love it, love it. These are the eyes, and those of you on Instagram, I hope you don't get seasick, but I'm going to hold my phone close so you can see my computer screen. I've worked with a lot of children who have this diagnosis of ADD and ADHD. This young man came to me with that diagnosis. Now, what we need to remember is there is no one marker in an eye that says this person has ADD or ADHD. Iridology is not a one marker means one problem. Iridology is about helping us to understand where the strengths and weaknesses are in the body genetically. And when we understand that and juxtapose it against the symptoms, we begin to understand why the body is working the way it is. When we understand that, we can begin to craft programs for our clients. Does that make sense? I don't actually need to know that this child has a diagnosis of ADD or ADHD. What I need to know is his parents say he has problems focusing. He's easily distracted. He doesn't sleep particularly well. And his diet's not great. That's all I really need to know. Because when I look at this young man's eyes, I see contraction furrows. These lines, these rings that go around and around and around and around. I see lines that radiate out. This puts this young man into a subcategory or a subtype that we call anxiety tetanic. What that really means is two key things. The first one is he burns through his B vitamins, vitamin C, calcium, and magnesium very quickly. And the second thing is he's likely to function mostly in the sympathetic nervous system, right? That means that he has problems filtering information for importance. Every piece of information becomes incredibly important. A pencil dropping, a fly going by, the teacher talking, every little piece of information that is coming in is equally important because his life might be in danger. That's what it means when someone functions in the sympathetic nervous system, right? And because of that, he burns through these B vitamins, vitamin C, calcium, and magnesium at record speed. So when we were working with this young man, we cleaned up his diet, got rid of the junk food. There wasn't a ton, but there was enough. Made sure we increased his protein intake throughout the day. We used some different supplements with him as well. And within the course of about 6 weeks, he went from not being able to pay attention, and I'm thinking specifically of playing the card game Old Maid with his mother, where he would not be able to get through one game previously. Within about 6 weeks, he was able to get through 3 games before he said he was bored and wanted to do something else. All right. And so these contraction furrows and radial furrows are pretty common in children who have ADD and ADHD. But I've also seen these markings, I see these all the time, in people who do not have ADD and ADHD. So we can't say this is a marking that says ADD or ADHD, but we can say it increases the risk of, right? And when we know that it's increasing the risk of, we then know what we need to do with diet, what we need to do with supplements, and then we can watch the behaviors to see what the changes are. Did that make sense? If that made sense, give me an oh yeah. While you're giving me an oh yeah, thank you, Melody. Fabulous. Thank you so much. All right. So what we've got here is, and love seeing all of you on Instagram. Thanks for being there with us too. Wonderful. And we've got an oh yeah from Lakita in the Facebook group. Wonderful. Thank you so much. This is our first case of PCOS that we're looking at. Oh, John Jensen, good to see you. Thanks for that. Oh yeah. Wonderful. This is a client who came to me in her mid-20s. And again, I work a lot with PCOS and a lot with infertility. And 3 of these women that we're going to look at actually had medically diagnosed PCOS. One of them also had a diagnosis of the MTHFR defect. Each of these eyes has indicators that can help explain or add to the story of why they got the diagnoses they got. There is not one thing in this eye that specifically says PCOS. But when we put the symptoms together with what we see in the eyes, we understand why she's at risk for and PCOS. And when we understand what her diet and lifestyle are like, we understand why she has PCOS. Do you understand what I'm saying? We don't diagnose from the eyes. So this is a young woman who came to me in her mid-20s. She had experienced a lot of weight gain. Her menstrual cycles were getting further and further apart. When we look at her eyes, she falls into that subtype that we call polyglandular, which suggests that she's at a higher risk for blood sugar imbalances and hormone imbalances. Her diet was really awful, really, really high in refined carbohydrates. She comes from a German background, so lots of rich food, white flour, white sugar, things like that. And that was really messing with all of her metabolism. PCOS is pretty complicated, but it almost always involves insulin resistance. And she was right there, hence the weight gain. When we worked with her and we corrected her diet, we were able to get the weight coming off. And actually, she had gained 50 pounds in a matter of about 6 months prior to getting married. And then after she'd had her first pregnancy loss, she had an ectopic pregnancy as her first pregnancy, she realized she was in trouble. She only had 1 tube left. She wanted a big family and she didn't want to end up in a bad situation or a difficult situation. So we started working simply by doing dietary correction. We were able to take that 50 pounds off. So she lost the weight. We were able to reverse the insulin resistance, and then adding a few little supplements to help protect her, she was able then to conceive 4 times very healthfully, and she's got a beautiful family. And so it all came back to recognizing that her eyes tell us she is prone to metabolic imbalances, particularly when it comes to blood sugars and hormone balance. Understanding what her diet was like, understanding what her menstrual cycles were like, correlating all of that to the general subtype of her iris helped us to understand what we needed to do and where we needed to go. Okay, so now I want you to keep this eye in mind. Remember, she had a medical diagnosis of PCOS. This woman also had a medical diagnosis of PCOS. Do you see how radically different their eyes are? She came to me, she and her husband, they'd been trying for 3 years to get pregnant. The doctors had already diagnosed her as insulin resistant. Her menstrual cycles were typically 90 days, which is a tip off that probably PCOS. So I couldn't say you have PCOS. And I asked her, has the doctor ever mentioned anything like PCOS? And she said, oh yeah, did I forget to say that? Oh yeah, you did, right? But the fact that she had fewer than 9 menstrual cycles in a year really tips the scale to likely having PCOS. So she was slender. She did not have any extra weight to lose. But her challenge was this: she is Asian, first generation Asian to come to Canada, both her and her husband. And they had retained the white rice habit from Asia and added to that all of the horrible food choices that we have available in the free world in Canada. And that is a recipe for insulin resistance right there. So we see that she's got the contraction furrows and the radial furrows. So we know that she burns through her B vitamins, vitamin C, calcium, and magnesium very quickly. Being a brown eye, I typically suspect maybe MTHFR, although we didn't have proof of that for sure with her. We gave her the B vitamins in the right form. We fixed her diet. Her husband lost 20 pounds, which he was very happy about because he's a competitive soccer player. And her menstrual cycles came down to 32 days. It took us 18 months of working together. but we got those cycles regulated. She had a very healthy pregnancy, a very speedy and wonderful labor and delivery, and delivered a 7-pound baby boy. She was told that she would be at significant risk for gestational diabetes because she was type 2 diabetic. But by the time the baby came, there'd been no gestational diabetes and there was no trace of type 2 diabetes either. We had successfully, because of doing diet correction and understanding what her B vitamins needed to be, we had successfully given her a beautiful opportunity for an amazing, healthy pregnancy and a sweet, darling baby boy. All right, so look at this eye. This is another client of mine. She was 20 when we took these pictures, and she came in to me as a university student because she was gaining weight and she didn't like it one little bit. So as we were talking, I asked her about her menstrual history and she said her periods were regular. I always push. So what does that mean? Do you have a menstrual cycle every 4 weeks? And she said, yeah, but they're about 4 weeks late. Okay, let's do the math here. Are you telling me that your menstrual cycles are actually 8 weeks apart? And she said, yep, that's what I'm saying. All right, what does that say? Probably PCOS. So her main concern was weight gain. We know that type 2 diabetes is best friends with PCOS. They almost always happen together. So when I asked her about her diet and her lifestyle, she said, yeah, I eat on campus. She was living, away from home, didn't have a car, and was on the campus meal plan, which is not the highest quality food. It's a lot of carb because that's cheap, right? And no physical activity except because she lived on campus. Even walking to her classes wasn't a big thing. So the fact that her menstrual cycles were 60 days apart, again, says probably like 95% chance of PCOS. We needed to clean up her diet and all that good stuff. But we saw something else in her eyes that said, you are at risk for blood sugar disorders. This is going to be hard for my friends on Instagram to see. The rest of you can at some point in time, come back and rewatch this and look at the screen, blow it up bigger. Right here, we have a fiber that lifts right off the eye and it casts a shadow. You've got a blow up of that right here. So this fiber has lifted right off the surface of the eye and it's casting a shadow. This is what we call a gateway arch. A gateway arch, really hard to see without really good camera equipment. I actually had never seen one until I got my 24 megapixel camera. And then I got so excited because 8 megapixels just didn't cut it, and neither do handheld photos. At any rate, we got her diet straightened around, and she didn't have a budget for supplements. So we just worked with diet, got her off the meal plan, got her walking the mile or two to the grocery store a couple times a week to buy food to actually prepare in her apartment. And she sent me an email a few months later saying she'd already lost 10 pounds and her cycles were getting a little closer together. So that was really exciting. Could I see in the eye that she had PCOS? No. I could see she was at risk for blood sugar imbalances. And when we tucked that together with the fact that her cycles were 8 weeks apart, that's what told us what we needed to do. Did I actually need to tell her, I think you have PCOS? No, I didn't. I did suggest that she should talk to her doctor about PCOS, but I never said you have, right? I just gave her something to run with. And that is an excellent way to plant seeds in your client's eyes. And I make sure when I do that, I will say, I cannot diagnose. I cannot prescribe. I am not saying you have this condition. I am suggesting you talk to your doctor and get testing to see if he agrees that this could be a possibility for you, right? And I find that some of my clients do, some of my clients don't, and it doesn't matter because if they follow the instructions I've given them and they're getting results, who cares what it was called, right? Does it matter what we call it if the client is getting positive results? No, not really. All right. this is another client of mine. She, again, didn't have a diagnosis of PCOS, but she and her husband had been trying for a few years to get pregnant with no luck. She's got a few tiny markers in her eyes that are really hard to see unless you're looking at the actual images on a big computer screen. That suggests that she also is MTHFR. Now, her diet was amazing. Like, I want to live with her. I want to eat what she eats. She is really conscientious about her diet. But the fact that she actually did 23andMe and found out she is MTHFR positive meant that we needed to make sure that we were getting the B vitamins into her in the right form. Now, we didn't have the 23andMe results when we started working, but I saw that marking and I thought, I think she just might be MTHFR. So I started giving her those B vitamins right from the get-go. She did get pregnant, and about halfway through the pregnancy is when she did the 23andMe. She's a woman who's extremely high strung. And when we look closely, you won't see this well, I don't think, on Instagram, but we've got contraction furrows in this eye again, which means burns through her B vitamins, vitamin C, calcium, and magnesium really well. She really internalizes her stress, and she vibrates with anxiety when anything is not exactly right. So she got these results from 23andMe, and she sent me an email. My computer just about exploded with the anxiety. It really did. And she said, here's my results. Oh no, I've got 23, or I've got MTHFR. And what about my baby? Is my baby going to be okay? You know, what does this mean? This is dangerous. And she was just vibrating. But I was able to say to her, I suspected from what I saw in your eyes that you had the MTHFR defect. You've been taking the right form of B vitamins since our very first appointment. So everything that can be done has been done. You are continuing those B vitamins. So I need you to take a deep breath. I need you to go find a storybook to read to your baby in utero. I need you to sing nursery rhymes to your baby. I want you to dance with your baby. I want you to have joy in this pregnancy. Leave the worrying up to me. I've got your back. Right? She delivered a healthy baby boy a couple of months later, well, at the 9-month mark. So we can't tell from looking at the eyes whether they've got PCOS or anything like that, but we can see that there is an increased risk of different types of imbalances. And when we understand those risks, correlate it with the symptoms, and understand their diet and lifestyle, we understand what's going on. Which eye is this? So Melody, I didn't see that. Were you referring to the previous eye, to this one? It actually doesn't even matter which eye this is. This, however, is a left eye, but it doesn't actually matter in this case because the placement of this marking is irrelevant. The fact that the marking is there is what's relevant. Okay, let's look at Sphincter of Audi now. How many of you know what Sphincter of Audi is? I want to see, just put SOD, Sphincter of Audi, in the comments if you actually know what Sphincter of Audi is. Because I'm going to tell you, when this client, he'd been a client of mine for several years, and then as they often do, we'd done some great work. He disappeared for a while. And then he came back and he said he thinks he has a Sphincter of Audi problem. So I'm not seeing anyone that's familiar with this. I didn't know what it was either. I had to do some research. My client educated me, gave me the Sphincter of Audi 101. And then I did some more research and elevated from there. Okay, so Sphincter of Audi is a sphincter that's right here. So you've got your liver that secretes bile. The bile gets backwashed into the gallbladder where it is concentrated so that when you eat something fatty, the gallbladder will squirt it out, bring it down through here, and will squirt it onto the fatty foods to emulsify those fats. When we've got this Sphincter of Audi that regulates the flow of bile into the small intestine. When people have a sphincter of Audi problem, 99% of the time it has come because they've had their gallbladder removed. My client, in those years that he disappeared from me, had had his gallbladder removed. When someone has a sphincter of Audi problem, the sphincter of Audi begins to spasm. And when it spasms, it gradually gets smaller and smaller and smaller until it's almost impossible for the bile to actually come through. Right? So let's look at his eyes. So first thing we're going to look for is there a firm indicator that there is a gallbladder problem? Gallstones are not genetic. They don't show up in the eyes. This is his right eye. If we were going to see any predisposition to a gallbladder problem, it would be sitting right here. There's nothing there. Nothing there. So why did he develop gallstones? His diet was good. Perfect? No, but none of us are. His diet was really good. Lots of veggies, very conscientious about water, doesn't do alcohol, doesn't drink coffee, doesn't do junk food. I mean, he's in his 60s and he's really careful about what he eats. He wants to age well. And so what happens here is this fellow is probably one of the nicest men you would ever meet. He's very kind, very considerate. I can see absolutely why his wife thinks he is just the king of the castle in every way. He's not a bully. He's not commandeering. He's very communicative. He'll discuss problems without, getting angry, without being judgmental. But he's a little bit too nice, right? Because when we are too nice and when we are angry and when we don't have a way to let that anger out, it goes in. And if it doesn't get resolved, it goes into the gallbladder. It creates ulcerations in the gallbladder, and the body sends in the minerals to try to soothe the ulceration, and that's the formation of gallstones. So when he and I were talking about why did he have his gallbladder out after the fact, I said, I know you are a wonderfully nice person. Truly, he is. I'm not candy coating this. Truly a wonderfully nice person. I said, so what do you do when you get angry? He works in an industry where things can get kind of stupid and there has to be some anger now and then. And he looked at me and he laughed and I said, you don't show your anger, do you? He went, no. And he started laughing. I said, okay, so do you know where the anger went? He went, what? I said, it went to your gallbladder. He went, oh. And I said, so, I love that you're a nice person. It would be really great if you had a way to resolve the anger, whether it's counseling, whether it's working out aggressively, whether it's journaling, whatever, something healthy, but it would be great for you to find ways to resolve your anger. So the gallbladder itself doesn't show up specifically in the eye, as in his eye specifically. It might in some people's eyes, but not in his, because his gallstones were earned from not resolving his anger. We also don't have a specific spot for the sphincter of Audi here, right? So because we don't have that in here, we can't know, we can't foresee that he's at risk for a problem. All right. Is that making sense? Give me a good makes sense in the comments if that's making sense to you. Okay, so where does that really leave us? Where does that really leave us as iridologists? So many people want to take an iridology class, so many herbalists and nutritionists, because they want to be able to diagnose. And I'm going to tell you that's the wrong answer. That's the wrong way to do iridology. We're not diagnosing anything. We're using iridology as an assessment tool. It really doesn't matter if you're a herbalist or a nutritionist, aromatherapist, a naturopath. It really doesn't matter. You don't want to use iridology to try to name a disease. You want to use it to understand all of the intricate connections in the body that are leading your client to have the symptoms they're having. I also think it's really wrong, and I'm going right out there on that thin limb. I think it's really wrong for iridologists to say, post your eye pictures here and I'll do a free iris assessment for you. So the client posts a picture, they don't give any information, or they might say, their age, their gender, and one or two health concerns they've got. And then they say, tell me what's wrong. And that's also not the right way to do this, because if your client is actually doing a lot of things right, if they have a good lifestyle, if they've got a really healthy diet going on, then some of the weaknesses, the weak links that we see in the eyes are never going to manifest for them in their lifetime. So dwelling on them is probably an irrelevant waste of time. I also see a lot of these photos that are posted that are really low quality, right? And the people get snitty if you say, that's not a good enough photo to give you any information on. Like, it's not my fault you can't take a good photo, right? And that might sound judgmental, but it's like going to the doctor, sitting in the doctor's office with your arms tightly folded across your chest and saying, tell me what's wrong, but don't ask me any questions and don't do any lab work. Absolutely the same thing. And so we need to really back away from the idea that iridology is a diagnostic tool. And we need to embrace the concept that iridology is an assessment tool to use in combination with other training that we've got. Does that make sense? Does it? Is that resonating with you? Some of you that have other iridology training might be bristling. Just know that when I started as an iridologist, I started as a Jensenian iridologist. I started at that point of you diagnose from the eyes. You tell your clients what is wrong with them. I did that for 10 years. I put my clients through cleanses. I put them on herbal programs. We did all kinds of stuff. They saw their health improve, but never once did we see their eyes change. And 9 times out of 10, when I told them that something was wrong, I was the one that was wrong. When I then learned about constitutional iridology and how to let iridology guide my client sessions, how to let it help me understand my client, that's when we started getting really good results. And that's when it all started resonating with my clients. Like, Edith, thank you for saying this resonates. And Melody, thank you. Appreciate that a whole lot. So we're not ever going to tell our clients what is wrong. We are going to see markers in the eyes, understand what those markers can mean, ask questions about the markers, the lifestyle, the diet, the client's symptoms, to get a more full picture of what we need to be doing with the client, what recommendations we can be making. So iridology is an assessment tool. It points the way to the questions we should ask. It guides us in helping us to make sound dietary or supplement recommendations. So again, what I said at the very beginning of this web class, if you've been hanging out with me for any length of time, you know that my 2 missions in life are to mentor practitioners who are struggling in their businesses because they are seeing the client, then going off and spending 2 or 3 or 4 hours of their own time creating wellness protocols to take back to the client. They're not getting paid for that protocol creation time. And my second mission is to teach the truth about iridology and its proper application in a holistic wellness practice. So for many years now, I have been teaching holistic practitioners just like you the art and the science of constitutional iridology. The next course is starting on April 21st. And I have deleted one of the slides I needed in here. Oops. Alrighty, I will post the link in the Facebook group for this. tell you a bit about the course and then give you some dates to maybe put in your schedule, right? The Dynamic Iridology Assessment System is the only live, online, fully mentored course for nutritionists, herbalists, and naturopaths who want to streamline their clinical work without sacrificing client care, so that the practitioners can stop working unpaid overtime creating client programs, so they can stop overwhelming their clients with programs that are just not doable. If you spent 4 hours creating it, your client cannot do it. It's too much. So that you can, as a practitioner, create programs that your clients can follow, that will increase their compliance, and that will then generate better success for them and long-term retention. I have many clients who have been with me for 30 to 40 years, clients that started with me at the very outset, even as a Jensenian iridologist. We grew past that together, and it's just brilliant. I love working with all my clients. I've got clients that are third generation, where I worked with the grandparents, the parents, and now I'm working with their babies. And that is a ton of fun. The next class is starting on April 21st. But since you don't want to sign up for a class without knowing what's involved, right? You want to know what the tuition is. You want to know what you get in the class. You want to know how the course is actually going to benefit you, right? Am I right? So on March 31st at 5 p.m. Mountain Time, I am doing an info session webinar. I'm going to post that link in the Facebook group. And for those of you who are not in the Facebook group, if you're on Instagram, you can PM me and I will send you the link for the March 31st webinar. If you're with me on the webinar right now, you will be getting the replay link for today, and I will make sure that we add to that the link for the March 31st webinar. Alrighty, so while we are here now, any questions that I can answer for you, anything that you want to know about what we talked about today or about the upcoming course, I'll give you a couple of seconds to do the lightning finger thing and type it all in. And while you're doing that, we are in full registration mode for the course right now. I limit my classes to no more than 10 students because I really believe in mentoring my students, and I know what my bandwidth is, and 10 is the cutoff point. And so if you are contemplating taking an iridology course, then you really want to either get in touch with me or you want to join us for the March 31st. The course itself is 20 weeks long. We have 1 2-hour live class online per week, and that gives you the curriculum. If you want to certify with IPA, I give you an additional 10 months with mentoring to actually complete the rest of the certification requirements. And in that 20 weeks of classwork, I expect that you are going to be starting to use what you've learned by the end of lesson 2. You're not waiting till the end of 20 weeks to look in eyes. You're not waiting 20 weeks to start practicing what you've learned and start applying what you've learned. You're doing it by the end of the second lesson. All right. You are welcome, Lakita. And Lakita, if you're interested in that March 31st webinar, just PM me and I'll make sure you get that link. All righty. Looks like that's all the questions we've got for today. Thank you so much for being with me. I've had a ton of fun because I think iridology is amazing. I hope you have too. And I look forward to seeing you again Monday night when we do an iris analysis online in the Facebook group. Bye for now.